So this situation was severe, very difficult to accept, but of course hope was always, that was the only thing we had left, hope. And my father said it won't last long. But of course, most of the people today knows that the war lasted for 6 long years. And they were 6 ugly, black, long years. You cannot imagine the terrible hardship we endured there. I was young, I was just 16 and a half, 17 years old. Well, I was still with my mom, and believe it or not, very few people had mothers, and there were very few mothers who had children, and my mom was a very moral support, if nothing else. A big disappointment for a young person like I was that I have not seen compassion. And we also had women SS guards, not just men, dressed in uniforms. And these women were just as cruel as their menfolk. So, you know, we were there in Bergen-Belsen till the 15th of April 1944, when we were liberated. We stood in front of the barracks in the morning at 5 o'clock, and we waited for the SS guards to come to be counted, and no one arrived. Eventually we heard shooting, and then we saw tanks and trucks entering through the main gate, and we realized they were not Germans. Soon enough we found out it was the British Army together with the Canadians. When they entered the camp, they were totally shocked. Young, strong soldiers vomited from the stench, they fainted, and they cried like children. They didn't expect anything to have seen like this. Of course, when the Nazi officers saw the British coming through, they didn't want to surrender. At that stage, they tried to escape. So one of the women guards who also wanted to escape, she had a blanket which was woven in Auschwitz by inmates for the SS people from human hair and recycled old fiber. She did not want to be recognized when she escaped, and she threw the blanket into the grounds. And I happened to see the blanket. I was sick, I was lying in the grounds, half dead. I was 29 kilos. And I picked up the blanket, and I had the blanket with me, covering myself in the bitter cold conditions. That was the day of liberation, which came too late to most of the people who suffered. I was still with my mom together. We had to register as survivors, and the next day we had to line up, and we had to be in a single file. There was an officer sitting behind the table, and we had to tell them our name, and we were given a tiny little registration card as a survivor. My mom came to the table, and she gave her information. She was registered as a survivor. She held the card in her hand, and she collapsed. I lost her. Sorry. It's okay. It's okay. I had to compose myself. Okay, so, you know, I was behind my mom, but I was devastated. I never saw her again. They took her away, and she's probably one of the mass graves. It's very difficult for me to talk about it. I want to tell you that not everyone who is registered as a survivor made it. My mom is registered as a survivor, but she is a victim. She was a victim. And from there I was taken to a public hospital in a nearby city. I was fully aware what happened. I was very sick, but my mind was clear as crystal. I had a very special visitor one morning from the British Army. A Catholic priest in full uniform, a padre, came to visit the sick in the hospital. Now, he never knew who I was, but he saw somebody in the far corner, half dead. I had no hair, my eyes were hanging out. And he came to my bed, and he wanted to give me the last rites. He had a cross, a crucifix in the hand, and a prayer book, and he came to my bed, and he made like this. You know, I give you the last rites, my girl. And I looked at him and I said, thank you very much, Padre, for visiting. However, you can't give me the last rites because I'm Jewish and I'm not going to die. And I met my husband. I was introduced to him, which was unusual because I was a young, so-called modern young person, and I said I'll find my own soulmate. But it just happened. I was introduced and I got married to him in 1947. And my husband said to me, we are not staying here, we are leaving, and we tried to be in a free world. And we arrived in Sydney and we started to work. 2 weeks later, we established our own business, and 2 weeks later we were taxpayers. And that was very important for us, not to be a burden. And it wasn't easy because we had no help from the government, we had no people we knew. But we did it, and we established not only the business when we started, but we had to establish, which was my dearest wish, to a family. This is a sculpture which is, I call it the family. And it is in front of my house in the garden. I always created things like the other sculpture there on the wall. It's a bas-relief. It's also mother and child. So it's always relating to my sensitive information background.